Tom Miller never expected his ordinary Monday morning to turn his entire understanding of the universe upside down. As consciousness slowly crept into his mind, he became aware of an unusual weight pressing down on his chest. The weight shifted slightly, and he heard what sounded like purring. His eyes snapped open, and he found himself staring directly into large, violet eyes set in a face that was decidedly not human. The creature straddling his chest had silvery skin that seemed to shimmer in the morning light filtering through his bedroom window. Two delicate antennae swayed gently above her head, and she was wearing what appeared to be his missing cleaning service uniform. "Please remain calm," the creature said in perfect English, though her mouth didn't move. The words simply appeared in his mind. "I can explain everything." Tom tried to scream, but his voice caught in his throat. He had hired a cleaning service 3 months ago, and every week his apartment would be spotlessly clean while he was at work. He never met the cleaner. The company assured him they had the best staff who worked quickly and efficiently. Now he knew why. "My name is Dot," the alien continued, still maintaining her position to prevent him from bolting. "I am what you would call an extraterrestrial being, and I have been cleaning your dwelling to study human habits. However, recent developments have forced me to break protocol and make direct contact." Tom's racing heart began to slow as his initial panic subsided. There was something oddly comforting about Dot's presence, despite the bizarre situation. Maybe it was the familiar uniform she wore, or perhaps it was the gentle way her antennae swayed, but he found himself becoming curious rather than terrified. "Recent developments?" he managed to croak out. Dot's silvery skin rippled with what might have been concern. "Yes. Your planet is in danger, and you, Tom Miller, have unknowingly been selected to play a crucial role in its defense. Your consistent organizational patterns and attention to cleanliness caught our attention. These traits indicate you possess specific neural patterns that make you compatible with our technology." She slowly moved off his chest, allowing him to sit up. Tom noticed that her movements were graceful and precise, just like how his apartment was always perfectly organized after her weekly visits. Everything was starting to make sense. The way his shoes were arranged by color, how his books were sorted not just by genre but by emotional resonance, and how his refrigerator contents were organized for optimal nutritional access. "I don't understand," Tom said, running his fingers through his disheveled hair. "What do my cleaning preferences have to do with defending Earth?" Dot's antennae twitched in what seemed like amusement. "Everything. You see, the greatest threat to your planet isn't coming from warships or invasion forces. It's coming from chaos itself, a sentient entropy that devours civilizations by introducing disorder at the quantum level. My species has been fighting it for millennia, and now it's approaching Earth." Tom looked around his perfectly organized bedroom, seeing it in a whole new light. Each time Dot had cleaned his apartment, she had actually been preparing him, testing his compatibility with some alien concept he couldn't yet comprehend. The morning sun cast long shadows across his bedroom floor as Tom realized his life would never be the same. His alien housekeeper had just promoted him from client to humanity's potential savior, and somehow, the most surprising thing about it all was how ready he felt to accept this new reality. Tom stood in his kitchen, clutching a cup of coffee while watching Dot move around his apartment with familiar efficiency. Only now, instead of just cleaning, she was revealing hidden technological wonders that had been disguised as ordinary household items all along. "Your air freshener," she explained, taking down the innocent-looking device from his wall, "is actually a quantum stability monitor." Her silvery fingers pressed a series of invisible patterns on its surface, and suddenly the device expanded, revealing holographic displays filled with complex data. Tom nearly dropped his coffee. "How many other things in my apartment aren't what they seem?" "Approximately 67% of your household items have been gradually replaced with our technology," Dot replied matter-of-factly. "Your toaster is a molecular scanner. Your washing machine contains a temporal stabilization unit. Even your rubber ducky is a sophisticated bioscanner." Tom choked on his coffee. "My rubber ducky? The one I actually use?" Dot's antennae twitched in what he was beginning to recognize as amusement. "Don't worry. It still functions perfectly well as a bath toy. We believe in practical multitasking. She moved to his living room bookshelf and pressed her hand against its surface. The entire wall silently slid aside, revealing a hidden room filled with softly humming equipment and floating holographic displays. Tom's jaw dropped. "This is my actual workspace," Dot explained, gesturing for him to follow her inside. Every cleaning service operative on Earth has a similar setup hidden within their assigned human's dwelling. We chose locations based on compatibility patterns, and you, Tom, showed the highest compatibility rating I've ever seen. The hidden room was immaculate, with everything arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Streams of data flowed through the air like luminous rivers, and in the center stood what looked like a control panel made of light itself. "The entropy entity we're fighting," Dot continued, "spreads by introducing chaos at the most fundamental level of reality. It breaks down the basic forces that hold matter together. The only way to fight it is with perfect order, not just physical order, but quantum order. Your natural inclination toward organization, your ability to see patterns, makes you uniquely suited to help us." Tom watched as she brought up a three-dimensional map of the solar system. A dark, writhing mass of what looked like static was slowly approaching Earth's orbit. "That's it?" he asked, pointing at the distortion. "Yes. We call it the disorder. It has consumed 12 civilizations in the past millennium alone. Each time, it starts small, random quantum fluctuations, unlikely coincidences, increasing chaos. By the time a civilization realizes what's happening, it's too late. Their very atoms begin to lose cohesion." Tom studied the map carefully. "But why me? I'm just normal. I like things neat, sure, but that's not exactly a superpower." Dot's expression shifted, her silvery skin rippling with what might have been excitement. "That's where you're wrong. Your brain patterns show an extraordinary ability to impose order on chaos. Every time you organized your books, arranged your furniture, or planned your schedule, you were actually manipulating quantum fields without realizing it. With proper training, you could become one of our most powerful weapons against the disorder." Tom looked down at his hands, trying to imagine them wielding quantum forces. "How long do we have?" "The disorder will reach Earth in approximately 30 days. Dot replied. "Your training needs to begin immediately." She paused, her antennae drooping slightly. "I should warn you, once we start, there's no going back to your old life. Are you ready for that?" Tom took one last look at his apartment through the hidden doorway, his ordinary, comfortable life waiting just a few steps away. Then he turned back to Dot and the control panel of light. "Let's save the world," he said, surprising himself with how sure he felt. "Where do we start?" "Focus on the cube," Dot instructed, her voice gentle in Tom's mind as they stood in the hidden room. Before them, a small metal cube floated in midair, spinning slowly. "Don't try to control it. Just observe its pattern." Tom stared at the cube until his eyes watered. They'd been at this for hours, and he felt no closer to understanding these supposed powers of his. "I don't see any pattern," he admitted. "It's just spinning." "Close your eyes," Dot said. "Humans rely too much on visual input. Remember how you organize your sock drawer." Tom almost laughed, but he closed his eyes. "My sock drawer?" "Yes. You arrange them by color, texture, and purpose. You create order without thinking about it. That same instinct exists at the quantum level. Listen to the cube's chaos, then smooth it out, just like you would smooth a wrinkled sock." Tom took a deep breath. With his eyes closed, he became aware of something he hadn't noticed before, a sort of itching in his mind. The cube felt wrong somehow, like a painting hanging crooked on a wall. "That discomfort you're feeling," Dot said, "is your natural response to quantum disorder. The cube is in a state of artificial chaos. Fix it." Tom imagined straightening the painting. In his mind, he reached out toward that sense of wrongness and simply adjusted it. A soft chime sounded, making him open his eyes. The cube had stopped spinning. Now it pulsed with a soft blue light, each face perfectly aligned with the room's dimensions. Dot's antennae were quivering with excitement. Exceptional! She exclaimed. You didn't just stabilize it, you aligned it with the local quantum field. Even our trained operators take weeks to achieve that level of precision. Tom felt drained but strangely satisfied. It felt natural. Like tidying up a messy room. That's exactly right, Dot said, her silvery skin gleaming. The disorder spreads by making people accept chaos as natural. Your gift is seeing the true pattern beneath reality's surface. Watch this. She waved her hand, and suddenly the room was filled with floating cubes, each spinning in random directions. The itching in Tom's mind increased to an uncomfortable buzz. Too many, he gasped, pressing his hands to his temples. No, Dot said firmly. Not too many. They're all the same cube, just viewed from different quantum states. Find the pattern that connects them. Tom wanted to argue that it was impossible, but something about the chaos called to him. He closed his eyes again, letting that familiar organizational instinct take over. In his mind, the cubes were like items on a cluttered desk. They just needed to be sorted. A series of chimes rang out, each one distinct and harmonic. Tom opened his eyes to see all the cubes pulsing in perfect synchronization, arranged in a complex geometric pattern. Beautiful, Dot whispered. You didn't just organize them, you created a quantum lattice. This is exactly what we need to fight the disorder. Tom swayed on his feet, exhausted but proud. How did I do that? Your brain naturally seeks out patterns and creates order. We've simply given you access to doing it on a quantum scale. Dot gestured at the synchronized cubes. Each of these represents a different probability state. By aligning them, you're strengthening the fabric of reality itself. And the disorder, it breaks these patterns? Yes. It introduces impossible probabilities, making reality itself break down. But you, Tom, can counter that effect. You can reinforce order at the quantum level, creating stable points that the disorder cannot corrupt. Tom watched the cubes pulse in unison, finally understanding. That's why you chose me. Not just because I'm neat, but because I can't stand things being out of place. Exactly, Dot said. Your need for order isn't just a personality trait, it's a fundamental aspect of how you perceive reality. With proper training, you could become one of the strongest reality anchors we've ever discovered. She waved her hand again, and the cubes multiplied further, filling the room with chaos. Ready to try again? Tom squared his shoulders, already feeling that familiar itch of disorder in his mind. Ready. Let's make things tidy. 1 week into his training, Tom noticed something wrong with his morning coffee. The liquid wasn't just swirling in his cup, it was moving in impossible patterns, occasionally flowing upward against gravity. He set the cup down carefully. Dot, he called out. I think we have a problem. His alien mentor emerged from the hidden room, her antennae already rigid with concern. You've noticed it too. The disorder is arriving ahead of schedule. Small anomalies are beginning to appear worldwide. She brought up a holographic news feed showing bizarre incidents from around the globe. Coffee wasn't the only liquid behaving strangely. Fountains were flowing sideways, rain was falling up, and in one city, all the traffic lights were showing colors that didn't exist. How much time do we have? Tom asked, watching a video of birds flying backward. Perhaps 2 weeks, not 4 as we estimated. Dot's silvery skin rippled with worry. The good news is that your training has progressed faster than any human we've worked with. You're ready for field testing. Field testing? Yes. We need to stabilize the quantum field around your city before these anomalies get worse. Other cleanup crews are doing the same in major population centers, but we're seeing the strongest disruptions here. Tom followed Dot to the hidden room, where she brought up a map of the city. Red dots pulsed across it, showing locations of quantum instability. Each of these points is a weakness in reality's fabric. She explained. Left unchecked, they'll grow until probability itself breaks down. We need to reinforce them, like fixing holes in a fence. Like straightening paintings on a wall. Tom said, remembering his first lesson. Exactly. But this time, you'll be working with actual spacetime, not training cubes. Are you ready? Tom nodded, feeling more confident than he expected. After a week of intense training, the presence of quantum disorder felt like a constant itch he could finally scratch. They left his apartment building together, Dot disguised in her cleaning service uniform. Tom could see the anomalies everywhere now, shadows falling in the wrong direction, pigeons phasing through walls, and street signs displaying randomly changing letters. Most people walked past without noticing, their minds automatically filtering out anything that didn't fit their understanding of reality. But Tom saw it all, and more importantly, he knew how to fix it. They reached their first target, a small park where all the trees were slowly turning inside out. Tom closed his eyes, reaching out with his newfound senses. The quantum disorder here felt like a tangled ball of yarn, all wrong angles and impossible knots. Remember, Dot's voice whispered in his mind. Don't force it. Find the pattern that wants to exist. Tom took a deep breath and began to work. In his mind, he could see the proper structure of reality here, the way space and time should flow. Like organizing a messy drawer, he began sorting through the quantum states, smoothing out paradoxes, and realigning probability. The air hummed with energy as he worked. When he opened his eyes, the trees had returned to normal, and the space around them felt clean and orderly. But something was wrong. The red dots on Dot's scanner weren't decreasing, they were multiplying. This is unexpected, Dot said, her antennae twitching rapidly. The disorder, it's learning. It's responding to our corrections by creating more anomalies. Look! Tom watched in horror as the newly stabilized area began to deteriorate again, chaos spreading outward like ripples in a pond. The disorder wasn't just random anymore, it was actively fighting back. What do we do now? He asked, feeling the quantum chaos pressing against his mind like a headache. Dot's expression was grim. We need help. It's time to show you the others. There's a reason we placed our best cleanup crews in this city. You're not the only human we've been training. A sudden burst of impossible lightning crackled across the clear sky, and Tom realized his real training was just beginning. The basement of the old library didn't look special from the outside, but as Tom followed Dot down the stairs, the air shimmered and reality shifted. The cramped space expanded into a vast control center filled with floating screens and humming equipment. 5 people stood around a central holographic display, each accompanied by a silvery-skinned alien like Dot. Everyone, Dot announced. This is Tom. His quantum alignment abilities are the strongest we've seen. A tall woman with gray hair stepped forward. About time you brought him in, Dot. I'm Rita, former librarian. This is my partner Ark. She gestured to her alien companion, who nodded politely. You organize books, Tom said, understanding immediately. Rita smiled. For 40 years. Turns out arranging books by decimal system was actually training for organizing quantum states. Who knew? The others introduced themselves. Mike, an air traffic controller who could visualize complex patterns in 4 dimensions. Jenny, a professional chess player who could predict quantum probability shifts. Pete, a landscaper who could sense disturbances in space-time. And Alice, a music teacher who could hear discord in reality itself. We're all people who create order in different ways, Jenny explained. The aliens found us through our jobs and hobbies. They've been preparing humanity for this threat for decades. The central display showed their city, now covered in pulsing red anomalies. As they watched, impossible geometries began forming in the streets, buildings started merging with their own reflections, and the sky occasionally forgot to be above them. The disorder is evolving, Ark said, their antennae moving in complex patterns. It's not just creating random chaos anymore. It's developing patterns. Bad ones. Anti-patterns, Rita corrected. It's learning to make wrongness that builds on itself. We need to work together to stop it. Tom watched as Jenny moved her hands through the holographic display, predicting where the next anomalies would appear. Mike coordinated their response patterns, while Pete mapped safe routes through the increasingly unstable city. Alice listened to the quantum frequencies, identifying harmonic points where they could stabilize reality. Here's the plan, Rita said, pointing to specific locations. We form a pentagram pattern around the city center. Each of us will establish a quantum anchor point, creating a stable framework. Tom, you'll be in the center. Your job is to reinforce the pattern once we establish it. Like straightening a tablecloth by pulling from all corners, Tom said, drawing on his housekeeping experience. Exactly. Dot confirmed. Your natural ability to create order will amplify our combined efforts. They moved out in teams, each human-alien pair heading to their assigned position. Tom could feel the wrongness growing stronger. Time was beginning to stutter, space was folding in ways that hurt to look at, and probability itself was becoming unreliable. From his position in the city center, Tom watched through quantum-linked displays as each team got into position. Rita organized chaotic energy flows like shelving books. Mike directed quantum particles like air traffic. Jenny predicted and countered probability cascades like chess moves. Pete smoothed space-time like tending a garden. Alice harmonized reality's frequencies like tuning an orchestra. Now, Tom! Dot's voice rang in his mind. Connect the patterns! Tom closed his eyes and reached out with his senses. He could feel the others work, 5 points of perfect order in a sea of chaos. Like straightening items on a shelf, he began pulling their separate patterns into alignment. The air hummed with power as the quantum framework took shape. Reality began to stabilize, orders spreading outward from their pentagram pattern. For a moment, it seemed to be working. Then the disorder struck back. A wave of pure chaos rolled through the city, shattering windows with sounds that had no business existing. The framework held, but barely. It's not enough. Rita's voice crackled through the quantum link. The disorder is too strong. We need something more. Tom looked up at the writhing sky and had an idea. Dot, he said. You told me humans see patterns differently than your people do. What if that's not a weakness? What if that's exactly what we need? Your people see patterns as absolutes, Tom explained, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling around them. But humans, we see patterns in everything, even in things that don't make sense. We find shapes in clouds, faces in random objects, meaning in coincidences. Dot's antennae straightened with sudden understanding. You create order from chaos by finding patterns that don't technically exist. Exactly. Tom turned to the quantum link. Everyone, stop trying to force perfect order. Instead, do what humans do best, find patterns in the chaos itself. Rita caught on first. Like organizing books by how they make you feel instead of by numbers? Yes. Mike, think about how you redirect flights during a storm, finding paths through the turbulence. Got it. Mike's voice crackled through the link. Working with the chaos instead of against it. Jenny's excited voice joined in. Like in chess, sometimes the best move looks wrong until you see the whole game. The disorder continued to twist reality around them, but now they watched it with new eyes. Tom could see patterns in its movement, not logical ones, but patterns that made sense in the same way that constellations made sense, connecting random stars into pictures. Pete, Alice, add your perspectives, Tom called out. What patterns do you see? Pete's calm voice responded. It's like a wild garden. Chaos has its own kind of beauty, its own natural flow. I hear it, Alice added. The discord, it's not random. It's like avant-garde jazz, there's structure in the chaos. Tom felt their different perspectives merging in his mind. Each human saw the chaos differently, but together their views created something new, a complex, multi-layered understanding of the disorder's movements. Dot, he said. Can you show everyone what I'm seeing? His alien partner interfaced with their quantum network, sharing Tom's merged perspective. Gasps of understanding echoed through the link as both humans and aliens saw the bigger picture. The disorder wasn't just random chaos, it had patterns of its own, like a living thing. And like any living thing, it had rhythms, habits, and most importantly, limitations. No, Tom commanded. Let's work with it instead of against it. Rita, treat it like a library where the books sort themselves, guide it, don't force it. Mike, create traffic patterns that flow with its movement. Jenny, use its own moves against it. Pete, shape it like a wild garden. Alice, conduct its discord into harmony. They began to work together in a new way. Instead of trying to impose rigid order, they started guiding the chaos, shaping it, finding natural patterns in its flow. The disorder, faced with this new approach, began to falter. It's working! Dot exclaimed. The disorder can't adapt to this kind of order. It's too organic, too unpredictable. Tom watched as reality began to stabilize, not into perfect patterns, but into a new kind of order, one that embraced both chaos and structure. The impossible colors in the sky settled into stunning auroras. The twisted buildings straightened, but kept subtle curves that somehow looked more natural than their original rigid shapes. This is remarkable. Ark's voice came through the link. We've been fighting the disorder across hundreds of worlds, always trying to impose perfect order. We never considered that chaos itself could be shaped into a form of stability. That's humanity for you. Rita laughed. We've been finding patterns in randomness since we first looked up at the stars and drew pictures in them. The quantum framework they had created was no longer a rigid pentagram, but a flowing, organic pattern that moved and shifted while maintaining its essential structure. It was spreading through the city, transforming the disorder's attempts at destruction into something new and beautiful. But just as they began to celebrate their success, a massive tremor shook the ground. The disorder was changing again, adapting to their new strategy. This time, it wasn't just creating chaos. It was mimicking their own patterns, turning their technique against them. It's learning, Dot warned. We need to end this now, before it masters our approach. Tom looked at the swirling chaos above them, and knew they had one chance left. Then let's show it something it can never copy, human creativity at its finest. Everyone, Tom called through the quantum link. Share your most human patterns. Not what you think should work, share what matters to you. Rita went first, projecting the feeling of finding the perfect book at the perfect moment, that spark of joy when random chance creates meaning. The disorder stumbled, unable to copy such a personal pattern. Mike shared the satisfaction of watching planes dance through the sky, finding beauty in their contrails. Jenny contributed the thrill of discovering an unexpected chess move that shouldn't work but does. Pete added the peace of watching plants grow in seemingly random but perfectly natural ways. Alice's pattern hit the disorder hardest. She shared the emotion of music, how random notes could create songs that moved people to tears. The disorder couldn't comprehend how chaos could create such meaning. Now, Tom said to Dot, show them what you've learned about humans. Show them why you chose to reveal yourself to me. Dot's antennae glowed as she shared her observations. Humans finding shapes in toast, creating art from coffee stains, seeing faces in electrical outlets. 1,000 tiny ways humans found meaning in randomness. My turn, Tom said, closing his eyes. He shared the pattern that had defined his life, the simple joy of creating order from chaos, not because it was logical, but because it felt right. He shared the satisfaction of a well-organized room, the peace of a tidy space, the comfort of knowing where everything belonged. The disorder writhed against their combined patterns, trying to copy them but failing. It couldn't replicate the one thing that made these patterns special, the human element, the emotional connection that gave them meaning. Together! Tom called out. Everyone, combine your patterns. Show it what humanity does best, finding meaning in meaninglessness. Their patterns merged into something greater, a symphony of human perspective, a celebration of how humanity had always faced chaos by creating their own order. Rita's books flowed into Mike's flight paths, which wove through Jenny's chess strategies, growing along Pete's garden paths, all set to Alice's impossible music. The disorder tried to fight back, but each attempt to create chaos only gave them more patterns to work with. It was caught in a loop. The more it tried to break reality, the more patterns humans could find in its attempts. It's working! Dot exclaimed. The disorder, it's not just retreating. It's changing! They watched in awe as the entity that had devoured civilizations began to transform. Instead of fighting the human patterns, it started to resonate with them. The chaos it generated began to take on structure, not the rigid order of alien mathematics, but the flowing, organic patterns of human creativity. We didn't just stop it, Rita realized. We taught it something new. The sky cleared, but not to its original state. It now shimmered with aurora-like patterns that somehow made perfect sense while being completely impossible. Buildings settled into shapes that blended order and chaos in ways that felt natural despite defying geometry. Remarkable, Ark said. In all our battles across the galaxy, we never considered that the solution wasn't to destroy chaos, but to help it evolve. Tom looked at Dot, who was watching the transformed city with glowing antennae. This is why you really came to Earth, isn't it? Not just to stop the disorder, but because you knew humans might find a different way. We hoped, Dot admitted. Your species has always been unique in finding harmony between order and chaos. We needed that perspective, not just to save Earth, but to save all reality. The transformed disorder entity pulsed one last time, then dispersed, not into destruction, but into a new kind of energy that strengthened reality instead of breaking it. The quantum readings showed it spreading across the galaxy, transforming other instances of the disorder as it went. So, Tom said, looking at his perfectly organized apartment building, now slightly tilted in a way that somehow felt right. Does this mean you're not my housekeeper anymore? Dot's skin rippled with amusement. Actually, I think reality could use more housekeepers. After all, someone needs to maintain the harmony between order and chaos. Tom smiled, watching the impossible yet beautiful new world around him. Well then, let's get cleaning.